If you think attraction is about looking good or saying the right words, you are missing the deeper truth that most men never learn in time, that real connection, real intimacy, and real masculine presence often begin long before anything physical ever happens, in the quiet moments of how a man treats his body, his mind, and the energy he carries into the night when no one is watching him. Because what if the real secret to confidence and performance is not in trying harder in the moment, but in what you consistently do when the world is silent and you are alone with yourself? There is a growing understanding in psychology and lifestyle medicine that nighttime routines shape not only sleep quality, but also hormonal balance, emotional regulation, circulation, and even confidence levels that directly influence how a man shows up in intimacy and connection. And among these routines, one practice that has quietly gained attention is the use of specific natural oils as part of a nighttime self-care ritual designed to relax the nervous system, improve blood flow, reduce stress tension, and help the body reset into a more balanced state that naturally supports masculine vitality. Now, before you misunderstand this, this is not about magic solutions or exaggerated promises. It is about how small, intentional habits signal safety to the nervous system and how that safety translates into better physical and emotional performance in relationships. Because attraction is not only visual, it is deeply biological and emotional, and the state of your body communicates more than your words ever will. When a man is stressed, overstimulated, sleep-deprived, or disconnected from his body, it shows in his posture, his tone, his energy, and even his presence. But when a man is calm, grounded, well-rested, and in control of his internal state, that energy is felt immediately by others, especially in intimate settings where emotional sensitivity is heightened. The nighttime oil routine is less about the oil itself and more about what it represents: a deliberate slowing down, a return to the body, and a shift away from constant external stimulation. Many men today live in a state of mental overload, scrolling endlessly, thinking constantly, reacting instead of resting. And this creates a subtle but powerful drain on the systems responsible for confidence, focus, and physical readiness. Over time, this can affect how they feel about themselves and how they connect with a partner. A simple nighttime ritual that includes warm oil applied to areas of tension, such as the shoulders, neck, chest, or even used in a gentle self-massage, can signal the body to release accumulated stress and shift into parasympathetic mode, which is the state associated with recovery, repair, and natural hormonal balance. In this state, breathing slows, muscles relax, and the mind begins to detach from the pressures of the day, allowing the body to reset in a way that indirectly supports stamina, energy, and emotional stability. This is where psychology and physiology meet, because what feels like a simple physical routine is actually a communication with the nervous system that says it is safe to let go. And safety is one of the most powerful foundations of attraction and intimacy. When a man feels safe within himself, he does not seek validation in desperation. He does not perform from anxiety, and he does not enter relationships from a place of lack. Instead, he carries a grounded presence that naturally draws attention without force. The oils themselves, whether they are natural plant-based oils used traditionally for relaxation and skin nourishment, serve as a sensory anchor that deepens the experience. The warmth of touch, the subtle scent, and the slow, repetitive motion of application all work together to bring awareness back into the body. This is important because many performance issues in intimacy are not purely physical, but are deeply tied to stress, overthinking, and disconnection from sensation. When the mind is too active, the body cannot fully respond in a natural and confident way. But when the mind is calm and the body is present, everything begins to function in harmony. There is also an emotional dimension to this practice that is often overlooked. Taking time for self-care at night is a form of self-respect. And self-respect is one of the strongest indicators of how others perceive your value. When a man consistently neglects himself, it reflects in subtle ways that reduce attraction over time. But when he invests in his own well-being, even in private, it builds an internal sense of worth that does not depend on external validation. This internal stability is what allows real intimacy to develop. Because intimacy is not just physical closeness, it is emotional availability, trust, and presence. The nighttime oil routine can become a symbolic reset, a way of closing the day with intention rather than collapse. Instead of ending the day in exhaustion and distraction, the man ends it in awareness and recovery. Over time, this creates a compounding effect where sleep improves, energy stabilizes, mood becomes more balanced, and confidence begins to feel more natural rather than forced. And when confidence becomes natural, it changes how a man interacts with others in subtle but powerful ways. His speech becomes calmer, his reactions become more measured, and his presence becomes more noticeable without effort. In relationships, this translates into better communication, deeper connection, and a stronger sense of emotional safety for both partners. Because intimacy thrives in environments where there is calmness, not chaos, where there is presence, not distraction, and where there is emotional regulation, not impulsive reaction. The idea here is not to turn a simple routine into something overly complicated, but to understand that small nightly habits can quietly reshape how a man feels about himself and how he experiences connection with others. And when these habits are consistent, they begin to influence not just physical well-being, but also emotional intelligence, patience, and relational depth. This is why something as simple as a nighttime oil routine can become more than just self-care. It can become a foundation for transformation in how a man experiences his own masculinity and intimacy. It is not about chasing performance. It is about creating the internal conditions where performance is no longer forced, but naturally supported by a balanced mind and body. Over time, this shift changes everything from confidence to connection to the way desire is experienced within relationships. Continuing from where we left off, it becomes important to understand that the impact of a nighttime oil routine is not something that appears overnight in a dramatic way, but rather something that builds gradually through repetition, consistency, and the way the body begins to associate certain cues with relaxation and recovery. The human nervous system is highly responsive to patterns, and when a man repeatedly engages in a calming nighttime ritual, his body starts to recognize those signals as a transition from stress mode into recovery mode. Over time, this conditioning can influence not only sleep quality, but also daytime confidence, emotional stability, and even the way he responds in moments of pressure or intimacy. Many men underestimate how much their nervous system carries unresolved tension from the day into their personal relationships. They may believe they are fully present, But in reality, their body is still operating in a heightened state of alertness, shaped by work stress, digital overload, social pressure, and internal expectations. This is where the nighttime oil routine becomes psychologically meaningful, because it is one of the few moments in the day where a man is intentionally slowing down his system instead of pushing it forward. When warm oil is applied slowly to the body in a controlled, mindful way, it does more than just relax muscles. It activates sensory pathways that shift attention away from overthinking and into physical sensation. This is critical because overthinking is one of the most common barriers to natural confidence and performance in intimate settings. When a man is stuck in his head, analyzing himself, worrying about outcomes, or trying to control every aspect of interaction, he disconnects from the natural flow of connection. But when attention is grounded in the body, breathing deepens, tension reduces, and presence increases. Presence is often what people interpret as confidence, but in reality, it is the absence of internal noise. This is why simple sensory practices, like oil massage before sleep, can have deeper effects on emotional and relational experiences than many complex techniques. There is also a subtle but powerful psychological effect tied to self-touch in a calm and intentional environment. It reinforces the idea that the body is not something to be ignored or pushed beyond limits, but something to be cared for and respected. In modern lifestyle patterns, many men treat their bodies as tools for productivity, only paying attention when something goes wrong. Over time, this creates a disconnect between mind and body, where the body becomes a source of frustration rather than awareness. The nighttime oil routine reverses this dynamic by creating a moment of reconnection. It is not about appearance or external validation. It is about internal communication. The body is being told that it is safe, that it is valued, and that it can release the accumulated weight of the day. This internal sense of safety is deeply linked to emotional availability. In intimate relationships, emotional availability is often more important than physical ability alone. A man who is emotionally grounded can respond to his partner with patience, attentiveness, and sensitivity. He is not rushing mentally to achieve an outcome, but instead participating in the experience as it unfolds. This creates a very different dynamic in connection, one that feels more stable and more fulfilling for both people involved. The nighttime routine indirectly supports this by lowering internal stress levels and improving overall emotional regulation. When stress hormones remain elevated due to poor recovery habits, irritability increases, patience decreases, and emotional reactions become more intense. But when the body is regularly guided into a relaxed state before sleep, emotional responses tend to become more balanced over time. Another important aspect is how this routine affects sleep depth and recovery cycles. Sleep is not just rest. It is the foundation of hormonal regulation, cognitive repair, and physical restoration. Poor sleep quality can gradually influence energy levels, motivation, and even self-perception. A man who consistently wakes up feeling drained or mentally foggy often begins to doubt his own confidence and capabilities, which then affects how he shows up in relationships. By contrast, a man who enters deep, restorative sleep on a consistent basis tends to carry a more stable energy throughout the day. The oil routine, when used as part of a broader wind-down process, helps signal to the body that it is time to transition into rest mode. This is especially powerful in a world where screens and constant stimulation often delay the natural shutdown process of the nervous system. Over time, these small nightly decisions begin to shape identity. A man does not become grounded, confident, or emotionally present through a single action, but through repeated behaviors that reinforce those traits. The nighttime oil routine becomes a symbolic act of discipline and self-awareness. It is a way of saying that the day does not control the man, but that he controls how the day ends. This sense of control is subtle but deeply influential in how masculinity is experienced internally. It is not about dominance or force, but about regulation, awareness, and stability. These qualities are often what create long-term attraction in relationships, because they provide a sense of safety and reliability that partners can feel. It is also worth noting that intimacy is not only about physical closeness, but about the quality of emotional energy exchanged between two people. When a man is constantly depleted, distracted, or tense, that energy is transmitted into the relationship, even if he is not consciously aware of it. On the other hand, when he is calm, rested, and internally balanced, that also becomes part of the relational atmosphere. The nighttime oil routine is not directly about improving performance in a mechanical sense, but about improving the internal state from which performance naturally emerges. When the internal state is balanced, there is less pressure, less anxiety, and more natural flow in intimate situations. There is also a deeper layer of self-perception that begins to shift with consistent self-care. A man who takes time to care for himself at night begins to build a stronger internal narrative about his own worth. This is not about ego or arrogance, but about quiet self-respect. And self-respect is often the foundation of how others respond to you. People are sensitive to how you treat yourself, even if they cannot consciously explain why. When a man consistently neglects himself, it often shows in his energy and behavior. But when he consistently invests in his own well-being, it creates a different kind of presence, one that feels more grounded and self-assured. As this process continues, the effects begin to compound. Better sleep leads to better mood leads to better interactions lead to stronger relationships, and stronger relationships reinforce emotional stability. The nighttime oil routine becomes a small but meaningful part of a much larger system of self-regulation and personal development. It is not a quick fix, and it is not a shortcut, but it is a simple practice that aligns the body and mind in a way that supports natural confidence and healthier intimacy over time. At this point in the script, we have explored how this routine affects the nervous system, emotional balance, sleep quality, and relational presence. But there is still a deeper layer to understand about how these changes influence long-term masculine identity and intimate connection patterns. As this practice becomes more consistent, something subtle begins to shift that most men never consciously notice at first, and that is the way they relate to themselves when no one is watching. Because intimacy, confidence, and performance are not built in the moment of interaction. They are built in the hours of solitude, in the private decisions that either strengthen or weaken the connection a man has with his own body and mind. The nighttime oil routine, when repeated with intention, slowly rewires this relationship. It turns the end of the day from a passive collapse into an active reset, where the body is no longer ignored but acknowledged, where tension is not carried forward but released, and where the nervous system is not left in a state of unfinished stress, but guided gently into recovery. Over time, this creates a noticeable difference in how a man carries himself in everyday life. He may not immediately associate it with the routine, but his posture becomes more relaxed, his breathing more natural, and his emotional reactions less impulsive. These are not superficial changes. They are reflections of a regulated nervous system. And a regulated nervous system is one of the most overlooked foundations of attraction and intimacy. People often think attraction is about appearance or charm, but in deeper psychological terms, it is often about energy regulation. When someone is grounded, their presence feels stable. When someone is internally chaotic, that instability is also felt, even without words. This is especially important in intimate relationships, where emotional sensitivity is heightened. A partner is not only responding to physical actions, but to microsignals of tension, presence, and emotional availability. A man who has not learned how to downshift his internal state often brings unresolved stress into these moments. This can create distance, miscommunication, or pressure where there should be ease. But when a man regularly practices slowing down his system at night, he begins to carry a different baseline into those interactions. He is less reactive, more attentive, and more capable of staying present without being overwhelmed by internal noise. Another important transformation happens in the way desire itself is experienced. In a stressed and overstimulated state, desire can feel rushed, anxious, or performance-focused. It becomes something that is pursued rather than experienced. But in a calm and regulated state, desire becomes more natural and grounded. It is no longer driven by urgency, but by connection. This shift is significant because it changes the emotional tone of intimacy from pressure to presence. And presence is what allows real emotional depth to develop between partners. Without presence, even physical closeness can feel disconnected. With presence, even simple moments can feel deeply meaningful. The nighttime oil routine also plays a quiet role in restoring sensitivity, not just physically, but emotionally. Modern lifestyles often dull sensitivity through constant stimulation, whether from screens, stress, or multitasking. Over time, this can reduce a man's ability to fully register subtle emotional cues in himself and others. By engaging in a slow, tactile, and mindful ritual before sleep, the nervous system is reminded how to feel again without distraction. This does not just improve relaxation, it improves awareness. And awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence, which in turn is a major factor in long-term relational satisfaction. There is also an identity level shift that occurs when this kind of self-care becomes part of a man's routine. He is no longer only identifying as someone who performs, produces, or reacts to external demands. He begins to identify as someone who maintains himself, who understands his internal state, and who takes responsibility for his own regulation. This is a quiet form of discipline that does not need external validation. It builds self-trust. And self-trust is one of the strongest psychological anchors for confidence. When a man trusts himself to handle his internal state, he is less dependent on external approval and less vulnerable to emotional instability in relationships. From a relational perspective, this becomes very powerful. Partners are often drawn not only to strength, but to consistency. A man who is emotionally unpredictable can create attraction in the short term, but instability in the long term. A man who is emotionally regulated creates a different kind of attraction, one that feels safer, deeper, and more sustainable. The nighttime oil routine contributes to this by reinforcing a daily pattern of emotional reset. It reduces the accumulation of unresolved stress, which means fewer emotional spillovers into interactions with others. As this pattern continues over weeks and months, the changes begin to feel less like something you are doing and more like something you are becoming. The routine stops being a task and becomes part of identity. The body begins to expect relaxation at night. The mind begins to associate evening with slowing down, and the emotional system becomes more stable overall. This is where real transformation happens, not in dramatic moments, but in repeated small signals that reshape how the nervous system interprets safety, rest, and connection. And when a man reaches this level of internal stability, something interesting happens in intimacy. He is no longer performing from a place of anxiety or trying to meet expectations in his head. Instead, he is participating from a grounded state where presence itself becomes the primary experience. This changes not only his confidence, but also the emotional quality of connection with his partner. Conversations feel more genuine, physical closeness feels more natural, and emotional exchange feels less forced and more fluid. In this state, intimacy becomes less about effort and more about alignment between two regulated nervous systems. In the end, the nighttime oil routine is not about the oil itself, nor is it about a shortcut to performance. It is about what it trains in the body and mind over time. It is about creating a consistent moment of stillness in a life that is often overstimulated. It is about teaching the nervous system how to transition from stress into rest, from overthinking into presence, and from fragmentation into integration. And through that process, it subtly reshapes how a man experiences himself, how he connects with others, and how he shows up in intimacy. When all of these layers come together, the result is not a sudden transformation, but a gradual return to balance. A return to a state where confidence is not forced, where connection is not anxious, and where presence becomes the natural foundation of intimacy. And that is where the real change lies, not in chasing performance, but in building the internal conditions where performance, connection, and emotional depth naturally emerge on their own.